Hey, this is Aaron, the Metal Theologian, and this is my response to or my entry into the thread about live albums. And I gotta say, I've been agonizing about this shit because as much as I've been listening to records, as many as I have, and as much as I like live albums for sort of presenting the raw energy of a band when they're great, or when the live records are great, I don't know, man. I just don't feel like I have a whole lot to show for this thing. But I went and did a little dig through, and I think I managed to find a few things. Kind of less on the, sort of hard and heavy thing, a little more on the punk than I would have expected. But I guess that's just where the shit is that I still have. So that's why there's some kind of obvious records that I used to have but don't own right now, like the Tokyo tapes or Live After Death. I mean, yeah, I used to have both, but sands of time, Actually, part of that's that I never really thought either of those was all that great compared to the studio albums. If I had them now, I'm sure I'd play both of them and love them, but, those are records I kind of struggled with a little bit more. And, that said, the ones that I do have are sort of that caliber, like Strangers in the Night or Live and Dangerous. I mean, I don't see a whole lot of point in showing those again. So I tried to pull some things out that not everyone's showing, and we'll see how it goes. So, to help me sort of get strong in doing this, I got a little soda here. And this one's actually one that I've overlooked. It's actually really high time I sort of present this one to the degree that I present this shit in my little mini-me, so to speak. This soda, if you're outside of the South, is pretty obscure. But here in the Deep South, it's ubiquitous. When I lived in California, I used to pay for a single bottle of this what a whole 12-pack of the shit costs here. Well, not quite. A 12-pack on sale, okay? But no shit, I pay $3.50 for a bottle of this shit in here. It's 12-pack when it's on sale, as it was today. So therefore, I present to you the one and only Cheerwine, the Cheerwine Legend, which is a sort of a cherryish soda, HFC, but it's an old Southern classic, and I've heard it's from where is it? Yeah, Salisbury, North Carolina. I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard they actually do their own distribution. So, like, if you're literally, if you're outside of the range of their truckers, you can't really get Cheerwine, and that's the main criterion. So, South Carolina, you can get it. I wouldn't be surprised if you get it in Virginia or, Georgia, but California, forget it. And I'll bet you can't find it in, Chicago either. Anyway, let's bust this bad boy open. Love that sound, right? Cheers. Yeah, this is such good shit. It's almost like a cherry cola in a way, but it's kind of not like a cherry cola too. It really has its own distinctive thing, To the degree that it's sort of fruity, though, it's fruity in a much more fruity way than like a Dr. Pepper, which is ostensibly kind of fruity too, but kind of lives and dies more in that bite that it has. But anyway, the other thing this guy's going for is it's caffeinated. Let's get to the records, though. So, there's certain logic to how I'm going to show these. We're going to start out with some metal. And kind of get some obvious ones out of the way, actually. Right here. If anyone else has shown this, I haven't seen it, but this seems like an obvious one. I can't believe I'm the only one who has it. So, here we go. Come on. Holocaust, Live, Curry and Wine. Semi-private press. Which means it's basically a private press because the Phoenix label was like someone they knew or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, this is a great record. Obviously had some influence on some people who don't need to be mentioned in my humble videos. And along with that, I actually found that at a record shop when I was still in high school at Chris's Warped Records in Lakewood, Ohio. I bought that thing for $2. This one I had to send away for. But this is actually the single that came out at the same time. And it has a couple tracks from the album, but it also has a live version of Death or Glory, which is worth whatever you pay for this all by itself. So, yeah, from 1981, great fucking shit, right? I mean, who can argue with that band? So let's see, here's another one that seems relatively obvious to me. Didn't quite put these in such a great order, but it's a St. Vitus live double. And, I gotta say, as far as like sounding all that different from the albums, this doesn't have a whole lot going for it, but I love the fact that this was a 2 LP set coming out in 1990 or whenever this came out. This is a reissue. Recorded in 89, sorry. This is the Southern Lord edition. I don't have an original. But, it's really a tip of the hat to the sort of sprawling 2 LP live sets that, were all over the place in the 70s, that every major band seemed to have to do as sort of a big statement. And I love Saint Vitus, and that guy looks just fucking crazy on this record. This is one of the few bands, actually, where it was seeing him live that turned me on to him. I mean, there have been a lot of bands that I discovered for the first time seeing him live, and a lot of bands that I liked more after seeing live, and even a couple I liked less after seeing live. But this is the only band where I walked into the show not liking the band, and basically just going because of who they were more than because I was so interested in seeing them, and walked out thinking, holy fucking shit, I can't believe how good they were. And I went out and fucking bought all their records, like literally all their records. So anyway, let me show this one. This record actually kind of sucks, but it's kind of rare, so I figure I'll show it. This is the first full length by A2Z, which sounds better than A2Z if you're an American English speaker. Maybe A2Z sounds stupid if you're English, but yeah, I mean, this record's really kind of a turd. I'm actually tried really hard to like this thing. I love the fact that their first full length was a live record. There's something ballsy about that I want to dig, and these guys did have a couple really good songs here and there. I think Treason, which is actually on the 12-inch, is really good. And there are a couple ones in there. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just kind of a boring record. It doesn't really have the energy that you hope to hear in a live record, and the recording quality sucks to boot. So, not a lot of good to say about that in contrast to this record, which is very early metal-wise. This is a Manila Road record, a live full-length that actually came out on High Roller just a couple of years ago. It was recorded in 79, so probably around between Invasion and Metal, right around in that time frame, if I'm not mistaken, and has 5 songs on it, and it's fucking fantastic. Like, if you like that early Manila Road sound, if you're in Manila Road for Mystification and Open the Gates and those records, which are fucking great, but it's sort of that moving more in a thrashier sound, this thing might leave you cold. But if you dig Invasion and Metal and that, that's still heavily rooted in the 70s hard rock sound they had going on early in their career, this fucking thing is worth every penny of what you spend on it. Fucking, it was recorded in Wichita too, man, right in their own backyard. What can you say? And I'm going to close out the metal section with another relatively obvious one. There you go. It's not showing up that well in the camera, but that's my original Live Undead. It's a picture disc with the custom sleeve on the back there with the titles and shit. And yeah, I know it's kind of a bullshit record, but first of all, it's my fucking video. Second of all, it's Slayer. What the fuck are you gonna do? Argue about it? And third of all, it's fucking awesome. So, and fourth of all, it's cool to look at. So there it is. Alright. Actually talking with a BC colleague and remembering this one was sort of inspired. I was actually going to pass on this one, but then I remembered that I had this thing, which is a pretty cool piece. This is a, I believe, German-only 12-inch version of Evil Live. In the former, it came out as a 7-inch over here. It's kind of long for 7-inch. It's 7 songs, and yeah, they're short, but this thing plays at 45 RPM. But yeah, actually, I'll show the back because that's kind of a cool picture that you don't see on any of the American releases. But this is a very cool piece. The versions are the same as on the LP. If you have the LP, you pretty much know these. There's a little bit more noise at the beginning of London Dungeons, so they splice the tape in a little bit of a different place, but that's about it. By the way, I was talking about Henry Rollins in my first thing. My first exposure to Henry Rollins' vocals was actually his backing vocals on We Are 138 on this record. And I just couldn't believe you could do that shit at the time. When I discovered Black Flag, I was like, oh my god, he actually has a band where he sings like that? And, well, not quite, but what the hell. This next one's sort of a semi-boot, but this is really kind of a totem of a band for me. This is Rocket from the Tombs. And this is Life Stinks, which for a long time was the only thing that you could get by this band. Supposedly limited to 600 copies. I'm showing this one first of all because it's harder to find, and second of all because it has a bonus 7-inch in it, which has an intro dedicated to Jane Scott, spoken by Peter Lofner. This band was from Cleveland, and Jane Scott was a local reporter for the Plain Dealer, whose main claim to fame was that she had interviewed the Beatles the very first time they came to town in the early 60s. When I was actually working at the record store in the early 90s, Jane would come into our store and shop around, and she was pretty senile by then, truth be told. Super nice lady, but she was, kind of only half there. And one really distinct memory I have of Jane was her talking about how, Rod Stewart was a really good egg. That was her thing. She was talking about how she hung out with Rod Stewart, and she was saying, hey, he was a really good egg. I was like, what a funny thing to say anyway, but especially when we're talking about Rod Stewart, right? For all sorts of reasons that I'll leave to you. But that's my personal Jane Scott story, and so I got to keep that for the intro. If you're interested in the Rockets, and you should be, because if you have even a passing interest in punk, they're one of the really all-time kind of great underground bands. You probably heard they kind of contained the roots of both Pere Ubu and the Dead Boys, and a lot of those songs are on here. Smogvale Records, I want to give them a quick shout out. They actually did a beautiful job of repackaging this unreleased radio broadcast, which, like I said, was the only thing that they actually, was their entire recorded legacy. They never recorded anything formally. They put out the whole show, though, in a 2-record set. It has everything on this record, plus a few other things, and they just did a beautiful job of it. It kind of goes in and out of print, but if you persevere, you'll find it. And you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it. If they're charging it, wait a while. Fucking send the dude at Smogville an email and ask him to reissue it. Maybe he'll do it for you, so good people. One more that I'm also a little surprised how I've seen going around, but this is another band where their very first record was a live album. It's an all-time classic. Fucking Kick Out the Jams by the MC5. This is sort of the idiot bastard brother to the idiot bastard brother that was Funhouse, which I showed last time I showed Punk Rock Records, but this is a hell of a fucking record. The first time I heard this, it blew my mind. I heard it was like this punk thing, and it was like so much earlier. This still has some hippie shit going on in it, you know what I'm saying? It's like 68 or something like that. It was so much earlier to what I was used to that I kind of couldn't relate to it right away. It took me a few listens, but man, it paid dividends. It was an awesome record. It's hard to believe they were doing this shit then, and I happen to know that this thing is on the wall at the Rock and Roll Truck Stop, so there's at least one other VC member who appreciates that thing. That is, like I said, it's an original press. I don't just mean not a reissue, I mean it's an original motherfucker version, so I'm kind of proud of that. Alright, so moving into the 70s now, I gotta show an Obscuro, right, or else what are you gonna think of me, right? And so I'm gonna show this record by the Taj Mahal Travelers, which is pretty much a jazz band, not jazz band, a freeform band, like total abstract. Whether you want to call them rock or jazz or anything else is almost completely arbitrary, because they kind of just sort of play, and this definitely isn't everyone's cup of tea. It's something to hear, because, I'm a big believer in listening to records to learn from them, whether you like them or not, you know what I mean? It's like, I think the first Boston record sucks, but I definitely think if you're going to listen to 500 rock records, that needs to be on the list, because you need to know what it sounds like, just off the top of my head, This is, I like this shit. It's not everyday listening. It's so freeform that, the song titles on this are actually, you probably can't see them on there, especially if I'm not putting it in front of the camera. But side 1 is the Taj Mahal Travelers between 6:20 and 6:46 p.m. The album title is recorded live, right? The title is July 15th, 1972. And this is just like what they were playing that night. So side 1 was then between 6:20 and 6:46 p.m. And side 2 has 2 tracks. One is the Taj Mahal Travelers between 7:03 and 7:15 p.m. The 7th track is the Taj Mahal Travelers between 7:50 and 8:05 p.m. So yeah, it has some kind of big names in the Japanese, fucking underground art / prog / craziness scene in the 70s, like Takahisa Kosugi is on here, and I thought there was someone else, actually. That's the only name that's jumping out at me. I'm not an expert, though, anyway, so what can I say? That's a very cool record, and it's live, and it's an Obscuro, so I can balance that out by showing this guy right here, which I happened to get right when it came out. Can you see that? My camera isn't fucking helping me here, is it? Goddamn piece of shit, man. Son of a bitch. I'll just wait for a fucking second. I'm gonna sip my Cheerwine and see if it gets its shit together while I'm doing that. Check it out. Fuck you, camera. I'm drinking my Cheerwine. Oh, there it goes. It's like car. I have to swear at it to get it going. Okay, so this is Black Sabbath Sabotaged. Obviously, this is a boot. Look, there it goes again. God damn it. It's a soundboard recording, though, from a show from, I believe, 1975. It actually has some songs off Sabotage before that record was even released. You can hear them announcing it, saying, yeah, this thing's on our record that's going to be coming out in a couple weeks. And so it has live versions of songs where you don't normally see live versions. Like, there's a live version of Megalomania on here. I mean, that's really kind of a big one. They do some of the rockin' ones, too. It's a 3-record set. It's actually 5-sided. So the last side is blank. The other ones have labels on them. And it's on this really cool looking purple vinyl. Watch, the camera's going to blur out again now. Oh no, it didn't. But it kind of looks black. Oh well. It's purple vinyl. You can take my word for it. I'm actually kind of proud to say that I'm not colorblind. Or am I? It also has this weird booklet in it with this, I mean, aside from a couple drawings and shit like that, which are kind of awesome, it has this essay in here by the keyboard player, which is actually bullshit. But it's this whole thing basically saying how he played all the shit, and like, these guys couldn't play for shit, and he was in the background, they were up there getting all the glory, and I'm so fucking bitter because I was actually the genius behind Black Sabbath, and no one even knows my name, so it's actually pretty funny. Yeah, one more little funny thing about this. The very first song on this record is Killing Yourself to Live. When my older kid was very little, like 3 or something like that, was just starting to get it curious about my records and that, I'd say, hey, you want to listen to some Black Sabbath? And he'd go, yeah. And if I put on any record but that one, though, because that was what I played the first time, I said, hey, let's listen to some Sabbath. If I put on any one, if the first song wasn't Killing Yourself to Live, he'd be like, that's not Black Sabbath, and he'd get really mad. So, like, first song was Black Sabbath. If it was fucking War Pigs, I couldn't listen to it, you know what I mean? So, that's the one that had to be it. I'm going to throw in another live record here that was kind of a gateway to the band for me. This is another one that I like a lot because this is a band that I've really come to adore, but I didn't really appreciate them until I heard this. And it's really just for the reasons you'd hope. I actually bought this, so I want to give it another chance. And I figured a live show in New York in '72, you know, their home turf, really early in their career. Fucking really early. That's probably the best choice you can give them. And, you know, the songs, Workshop with a Telescope, Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll, The Red and the Black, and then Buck's Boogie, which really is kind of superfluous on this thing, Buck's Boogie. I mean, fuck that. But the other 3 songs are just rockin', and I like the other live record, too, the first one, anyway. They kind of lose me a little bit later in the 70s. I still like it, but not to the same degree that I like Secret Treaties, say. But, that's the one where I was kind of like, you know, I need to spend a little bit more time with this band. Instead of just thinking, man, with a name like Blue Oyster Cult, they really ought to sound a hell of a lot heavier than they do, but they just don't. I'm disappointed. So, it's worth the effort once again. I really love early Blue Oyster Cult. Actually, the other reason I got into Blue Oyster Cult is when I got really into UFO. I got really into UFO, bought all their records, played the shit out of them. For some reason, got rid of all of them. It was because I was moving, it was hard times and shit like that. That's another story, right? I didn't have any UFO records, though. And I couldn't find them anywhere, either, even though I was living in the city. And I was like, what the fuck do I have that could possibly scratch the itch of a UFO, since I don't have any UFO records? And the closest thing I could was Blue Oyster Cult. So I ended up listening to the first 3 Blue Oyster Cult records over and over and totally assimilated them. And they're like part of my brain now. It's like they're this lobe and UFO is like this lobe, but, or at least a little chunk of it, you know. But, yeah, it's kind of funny how UFO helped me to appreciate Blue Oyster Cult by their absence in my life at a key moment. So, anyway, here's another all-time favorite live record. This one definitely took a while to assimilate. I mean, the first time I heard this thing, first time I fucking saw this record, before I even heard it, I loved it. you know. And then I found out Lemmy was on it, and I loved it even more. I didn't even like Motorhead yet, but just for the fact that he was on this. And then I listened to it, and I loved it. But it was a while before I could sit down and listen to this whole thing all the way through, and honestly still be digging it at the end, as opposed to telling my friends that I dig it because, I don't know, because I was trying to fucking prove a point or something like that. This is a fucking great record, though. It's weird as fuck. You know, not the easiest band to assimilate anyway, but it holds a very proud position in my Hawkwind collection, even though it's not my favorite Hawkwind. Gotta show this one, Blood Rock Live. Another great band. Blood Rock, man, when Blood Rock sounded dated, they sounded really dated. I don't think 70s... I think Lucky in the Morning is probably like average 70s sort of defined, but they had so many great songs. Castle of Thoughts is great. Actually, that's pretty dated too, but Gotta Find a Way, DOA, so much great shit, and a lot of it's on here. If I had to pick one favorite Blood Rock record, it might actually be USA. It'll be the tie between the first one, the second one, and USA. I think USA might have a slight edge just for being a little bit more intimidating even than the other ones. But this is a really cool live record, and it doesn't turn up a lot, but when it does turn up, it usually is cheap because it got good distribution, and Blood Rock just doesn't have the fans it ought to. Alright, one more Obscuro. Gotta show a German one, right? So here's the German one. This is Witthöser and Westrup, who were sort of like a psychedelic folk duo in Germany, and that sounds actually really shitty. And this record's good, but their first couple records, they were just like fucking... It's like they were taking so much fucking acid. It's like if they had electric instruments in the room, it might just as well have come out rock. It's like they're just fucking crazy. They tell crazy stories, and it's just like fucking nuts, you know. It's like if Simon and Garfunkel went. Actually, no, it's nothing at all like Simon and Garfunkel. I was gonna say though, because it's funny anyway. If Simon and Garfunkel went, there's no fucking way we are ever gonna make a dime off any of our fucking records, and we're gonna be working day jobs when we're 60, and we're pretty much fucking doomed. But right now we have an opportunity to make a record, so let's just do whatever the fuck we want, and let's take a lot of drugs before we do it. It would be something like this. Okay, so what I just said isn't true, but otherwise that might leave you with something resembling an impression of it, maybe a little bit. I don't know. Alright, I've got one last record here, which is probably going to surprise you a little bit too, that I'm showing this thing off. But sort of to wrap this whole video up, because this is the last one, if there's one thing that I expect from a live record, and what really makes a live record a valid statement, as opposed to just a cash-in where, you know, oh, okay, the band's really popular right now, so let's sell the fans the same songs again and just repackage them, right? I mean, because there are a lot of live records like that. What really makes a live record great to me is when you listen to it, and yeah, there's the same songs, maybe a couple exclusive songs, maybe not, but you hear the energy, not just the crowd going, because you can dub that shit in, but you actually hear the raw presentation. You hear the mistakes, you hear the grit, you hear some of the banter in between, but not to the point where it dominates. Which reminds me, I should have shown my copy of Having Fun with Elvis on Stage, but I fucking forgot it. Sorry. This record, though, has that. And even though I'm not a big fan of this band, this is one of my favorite of their records for just those reasons. You ready? This is one of the best live records, as a live record, that I've ever heard. No shit. And it's a great record from start to finish, too. It really is. I almost never play it. I'm not much of a fan, and to the degree that I am a fan, man, I played those records. I was done with that band by the time I was about 23. And that was a long time ago now. But if you want to hear what a live record should sound like and what a live record should do for a band's sound, give this one another chance. And if it's been too long, you haven't spent enough time listening to 60s records to really get it, then I don't want to say go find a Jumpin' Jack Flash single, but you know, listen to Beggar's Banquet, listen to Let It Bleed, and then listen to those same songs in here. And that's what makes a live record. That's what a live record should be. And I have to tip my hat to the fucking Stones for pulling that shit off, because or their producer, whoever the hell it was, right? But they fucking did it. So thanks a lot. Thanks for indulging me. Maybe I turned you on to something cool. Maybe not. Hope you got a laugh in any case. Thanks for watching.